got 6, and I kind of wish I knew how to juggle because they're just like the cutest balls. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Kuriaknits channel. My name is Erin, and I'm so excited you decided to join me here today. As you can tell from the title, I have just been to London, England, and I'm excited to share my adventure with you all. I was there for a conference and then of course went to London for a little bit, and I'm excited to tell you all about my travels. But before we get into that, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and go check out any of the links below in the down bar. Anything I mentioned will be there, and my Ravelries there as well if you want to keep up with what I'm knitting, as well as Instagram. They're both there. So anyways, I just got back from the UK literally yesterday, and you are finding me on my bedroom floor because I am doing a lot of laundry, as one does when they get back from a workcation situation, and the machine is loud, so I'm hiding from the noise here in my bedroom, so welcome. And I'm going to show you everything that I got in London. So I went to London and I wanted to go to some of the local yarn stores there, and I was really excited with what I found. I ended up going to 3 yarn stores, but I will show you first what I was knitting on while I was there. So I don't really go for project bags. I think that they're beautiful, but I kind of feel that they're a little bit unnecessary. So I just use totes, and this will give you a little hint of one of the yarn stores I ended up going to. But I have my project in this beautiful knitter's tote, and I love when stores give you totes because I use them as project bags or any other bag. So I wanted to take a project that I could just knit round and round and round on, and a project that was familiar to me, and so I decided to start another ranunculus, and I finished the whole body on my trip, and I am so pleased with it so far. I had finished basically up until here before I left, and that way I could just make it easy for myself to knit round and round and round. I kind of just did this top part in a night, and as you can tell, I didn't actually get too much knitting done. I basically only did from here down, which I guess is enough, but I honestly thought I would get a sleeve done as well, but that's okay. I am knitting this in Drops Air. You may recognize the color because it was what I was once knitting a cardigan number 7 out of, and I ended up ripping that back because I just was not loving it with the mohair I was using, and so I am using Drops Air on its own to make this ranunculus, and I absolutely love it. Drops Air is one of my favorite yarns of all time. It is so squishy and lovely, and I am using, it is 65% alpaca, 28% polyamide, and 7% wool. And if you're familiar with the ranunculus pattern, you can basically use any wool or yarn from a fingering weight up until a worsted weight, and depending on what you choose, we'll just decide how thick the pattern was. And I've done this in a sport weight before. I ended up ripping it back because I just knew that I would never wear it in such a thinner drapey fabric, but I love it in this worsted weight, and I just think that once this is blocked in some of this lace and beautiful like slip stitch, I don't know what you call it, but the work that's up here I think will really just shine, and I'm so excited to be able to wear this. It's almost getting too warm to wear this now, but nonetheless, this is what I knitted on. And one of my other priorities for bringing something to knit with is that I wanted to be able to use these knitting needles. Now I'm going to share more about these in a what new knitters should look out for, good tools for new knitters sort of situation, sort of video. But I love bringing these on trips with me and on airplanes with me, predominantly because they're really blunted. There we go, we have some light. As you might be able to tell, they have rounded tips, and I know that knitting needles are allowed on most airlines in most countries, but on the off chance, I've heard some horror stories of people having their knitting needles taken away. I think these probably have the least chance of having that happen, and they are needles that I love anyway, so I'm happy to use them. So I brought them in a US 10 and US 8, which is a 6 and 5mm needle to be able to do both the body and the ribbing, and I had no problems. No one questioned it. I had it in my carry-on. No one had a problem with it. And these are the, by the way, the PRYM ergonomic needles. They are a fixed needle, but if they had interchangeables in this style of tip, I would use it. I would buy it in a second. They're a little bit unique because they're actually plastic. And ordinarily I would not advocate for plastic needles, but these are so special, and especially for new knitters, I think they're really, really excellent. You can see the tapering here just makes it super easy to pick up stitches. If you are new to lace work, if you are new to knitting in general, I would highly, highly recommend these needles. And even now that I have an interchangeable set, a metal interchangeable set, I've tried wooden needles, I still come back to these when I have a project in which it suits, because I think that they're really, really excellent needles. I have them in sizes from a 4mm all the way up to an 8mm, the whole sizes, and I reach for them all the time. I absolutely love them and would highly recommend these needles. But that was also a priority when I was planning to bring a knit for the travel, is that I wanted something that I could use these needles on, because again, the blended tip, and if they were pulled out, they're cheaper needles that I knew I could replace. So that's what I brought, and I just brought some extra yarn as well. So I think I had brought five balls of yarn, and I ended up using almost 4. This is what I have left of the 4th, not much at all, and then my 5th is still whole in the bag. So yeah, not bad. I think I budgeted for that pretty well, and I also really liked bringing drops there because it's super light and it's super squidgy, and so you can compress it really, really small if you almost ran out of space in your bags like I did, because shopping in the UK is amazing and I love so many UK brands that I bought too many things, more things than I expected to. But you guys are not here to talk about my clothes shopping. You're here to see my yarn shopping. So let's get into the yarn shops. So I had a few mornings in which I was free, and I will just note that yarn stores in London open quite late. I think the earliest I went to an opening was 11:30 a.m. and most of them are not open on Tuesdays, and a lot of them are only open Wednesday to Saturday. So before you venture out to a yarn store, I highly recommend you check their hours of operation, because I found that a little bit strange, and yeah, it wasn't quite what I expected. So if you want to like take off somewhere in the morning, there's really nowhere for you to go. So plan to hit places maybe after lunch would be a good idea. And I will also say that the yarn stores are really far apart from each other. I had, through my Google searching, had found 5 yarn stores, and I only made it to 3 because 3 were within where I was willing to go. The other ones were quite far out of central London. So if you are a tourist to London, it's your first time in London, I would recommend hitting up one of these stores, and I'll tell you about some of the pros and cons of each of them, because they are very far from each other, and if you want to hit them all in a day, that's kind of your whole day in London. Whereas for me, this was my 3rd time in London, and I'll be back next year for research. I'm a historian, and I do research on England and the National Archives there in London. So I know I'll be back, and for me, wasting some hours going to yarn shops is not time wasted at all. But if I was there for the first time and I wanted to do the more touristy things, I think I would be disappointed with how much time it took to get to these yarn stores. So definitely keep that in mind. So the first one I went to is Wild and Woolly. And I actually didn't think I would go to Wild and Woolly because it's in Zone 2 in London. So if you've never been, I'll put up a map here, but London is split up into zones, and when you're a tourist in London especially, you usually just stay within Zone 1. That's kind of everything that you consider like quintessentially London is in Zone 1. So like the Eye, Buckingham, the Tower of London, things like that, they're all in Zone 1, and that's where it's like a set price on the tube. Wild and Woolly is in zone 2. It's not at all that far out. I think it's like 6 kilometers from the center of town, but in London terms, it takes quite a bit to get out there. And so I ended up taking the tube and then the overground and then walking a little bit to get out there. And then on the way back, I had to take a bus. And I don't think I would have been comfortable doing that had I not been in London before and had a little bit of an idea about the transportation system. So I just encourage you to keep that in mind. That said, it was a really lovely shop. I got there for opening. I believe it opened at noon, and it was 12:05 and no one had come yet. And I was like, oh, I'm a little unsure. Maybe I got the hours wrong. The reason I went out to Wild and Woolly, by the way, is because I had a free Tuesday afternoon, morning and afternoon, and it was the only yarn store that was open on Tuesday. So I figured, let's just go out, whatever, I've got time. And then the owner came up and she was on a bike and she said, I am so sorry. I'm about to put a sign in the door. I'm actually really not feeling well. And so someone is coming to open the shop, but they're not going to get here till 1. And she recommended a beautiful creperie that's just down the street to go get some lunch. And she said that someone would be there around like 12:40, 1-ish. And I said, no problem at all. Thank you for letting me know. Went, had a crepe, had a coffee, was delicious, came back, and there was someone in the store to welcome me. And she was saying, we had got to talking, she was really, really lovely. And I explained that I wanted some yarn for a test knit that I'm doing for Starry Nordland, the poetry pullover that I have not yet started, but I'm very excited to start. But I am doing that test for her, and I'm looking to get a sweater's quantity of yarn for that test knit. And she looked at the specs for me and she was immediately like, you could do this yarn and this yarn and this yarn, and was asking me about my trip, and I was asking her about the shop. And it's a much smaller shop, I would say, than the others, and even ones that I've been to in Canada. They're very particular about the yarns that they stock, but the yarns that they do stock is really, really beautiful yarns. And she said it was just herself and the owner that were the only 2 people that worked there. So if you're not speaking to the owner, you're probably speaking to the one that I spoke to mostly. And if you're watching, thank you. You're absolutely lovely, and you led me to sweater's quantity of this. She had actually recommended 2 yarns. I think one of them was Spanish and one of them was Portuguese, and I really wanted an English yarn because I'm in England. Because I knew I would be back in Europe in June, and so I wanted to focus this trip on British yarns specifically, because I knew it would probably be less likely for me to find them in Europe proper when I'm back in a month and a half. That's crazy. I had a bit of a nightmare airport experience, and the idea of going back that soon is a little bit scary to me. But anyways, let me show you the yarn that I got. So, oh my gosh, I completely forgot about one. Okay, after this, I'll tell you about that. So, I ended up getting this. This is West Yorkshire Spinners Fleece. It's 100% British wool, blue face luster, and a DK weight. It looks like this. And so I got the color light brown 002, and it is 225 meters for 246 yards. Reared, sheared, and spun in Brighton. And I loved this. I am always so attracted to these beigey colors with a little bit of variegation in them. And I am just obsessed with the way this looks. And I cannot wait to knit this into a poetry pullover. I will probably be casting this on tonight. And I was really excited to get my hands on some British wool. And specifically, I had seen a lot of people talk about blue face luster and how it's a type of sheep wool brand, I don't know what to call it, that they really liked. So, and it also feels beautiful. So I'm really excited to be able to knit with this. It's 100% wool. And I got 6 skeins of this. And that is all I got while I was there. But I was thrilled with being able to get this. I think each of these, you know, I'm going to be incorrect on the price, so I'll just put it on the screen. But there were lots of beautiful colors, and I think that their shop is really lovely. If you need advice on something, they seemed really willing to talk you through, and I'd say that wasn't necessarily the same for all of the shops that I was at. So I would absolutely highly recommend checking it out, especially if you want a sweater's quantity of yarn or you want some advice. But yeah, really beautiful shop, and I was really happy I was able to get out there. Now, I had forgotten about one because I actually started off my trip with a day in Brighton, and I did not expect to go to a yarn store at all. Oh my gosh, is that so funny? I didn't even realize I got the same brand. Okay, so that's so funny. I ended up going to Brighton, and I was in the lanes, and I honestly don't even remember the name of this yarn shop. I was in the lanes. I was waiting for my two colleagues that I was there with to come out of a thrift store. I had went into the Luciniac inaugural store. Their first store ever was there, and I've been obsessed with Luciniac. I've been wanting to buy their stuff for ages, but customs and shipping to Canada is ridiculous, and so I was so excited to get my hands on some of their stuff. And if you know their stuff, you know it's bulky, and that is why my suitcase was so filled up. But I looked down the street and I was like, oh my gosh, I think that's a yarn store. And so of course I booked it over there, but I wasn't planning to go to a yarn store at all. And I knew that I would be getting more things in London. So I only got one skein, and I didn't even realize that it's the same brand. I didn't even realize, but this deep, deep brown color was really, really calling to me. And so I got this West Yorkshire Spinners fleece, 100% British wool in, this is their Jacob. So it's a different kind of wool, but they're both DK weight. And so if I have any extra of this, I might pair it with this. They do feel a bit different. This dark brown definitely feels a lot rougher, a little bit more of a rustic yarn, and the Blue Face Leicester definitely feels softer. Other than that, they have basically the same stats. So I think the main difference is just the type of wool. And also, I'm pretty sure that this one was a lot cheaper than this one was. So, yeah. But it's a brand. This West Yorkshire Spinners is a brand that I'm not familiar with. I'd be interested to look more about. But there's also, like, random fibers in this one. So it just seems like a much more rustic version of this one. And I honestly think that I would have gotten a sweater's quantity in the more rustic one if they had had it. That's so funny. I didn't even realize they're the same. But this is a really deep brown color. It's in the color black brown. Very appropriate. And they had a lot of really nice wool. That shop was strangely a little empty when you walked in. It looked a little bit makeshift. But they did have some really cool stuff there, but I was in a rush. So I ran in. I was like, I'll get something that looks very quintessentially British. And ended up getting this. It's just what stuck out most to me, and I really like it. I honestly thought that I would get the Jamesons and Smith, and I didn't end up getting any Jamesons and Smith. First, I was really surprised. So I've seen other people talk about Jamesons and Smith, obviously, and I thought I would get some because it's known as like a workhorse British wool that's really well known. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like my kind of wool. I didn't end up getting any. I almost did at almost every store I was at. It's kind of the one, like in the same way that in Canada, Cascade 220 can be found in basically any store you go into. For them, Jameson and Smith can be found in basically any store that you go into. But I was kind of put off by how small the balls were, and I didn't think that I would be able to make anything out of them unless I got a whole bunch. And it just wasn't calling to me at any point. So I didn't end up getting any. But anyway, so the next day I went to Beautiful Knitters for opening, and when you buy something you get this beautiful tote bag, which I was thrilled about. They've got a really lovely shop in, what's that neighborhood called? Kind of south of London. I would say it's the most central. It's the easiest to get to. It's really close to like a Zone 1 central tube station. And it's a lovely, lovely neighborhood. Just like beautiful tree-lined streets. I was there at the beginning of spring and all of the trees are flowering. Made it all the more depressing to come back to Ontario, where we have not reached that point of spring yet. I'm thinking within the next week or so. But yeah, it was really nice walking into their shop. Their shop was beautifully laid out. It had just a lot of selection. And I got a little bit of a random mix of yarns from their shop. So I didn't have anything in mind. I had wanted my sweater's quantity of yarn, and that was taken care of. So I was kind of open to do what I wanted. And I first got a button, and I wish I could show it to you, but it fell off my backpack coming back from the UK. So that's unfortunate. But yeah, so the first thing that I got that I was drawn to purely because of the stunning color is this mohair. So this is from Onion. It is 40% mulberry silk and 60% super kid mohair. And the mohair is from South Africa. And Onion is a Danish brand. And I was honestly just drawn to this color. It's like really purpley with a silver strand in it. And I think I have a fingering weight yarn that would just go perfectly with this. It is 240 meters. So I actually should have gotten 2 of these. But it's also on sale. So it's regular £9.50. And I think I got it for about £7. So I just got a skein of this because it was really calling to me. And then they had an amazing selection of knitting for all. I was talking to the women there, and they said that they were one of the first in the UK to be shipping Knitting for Olive. And I hadn't planned to get anything Knitting for Olive because I am going to be at the Knitting for Olive store in about a month and a half. But I saw this and I honestly couldn't pass it up. And so I got 3 skeins of their silk. This is in the color Sunflower. It's 100% borderette silk. And I didn't know that it was Ecotex certified. So that's really awesome. I plan to make like a cropped summer top with this, but it's just the most beautiful shade of yellow. I am so pleased with it. They were asking me, they just got an order from the Knit Purl girl, and they were asking me if I was going to make her new top with it. And I think I will make her a new top. I think it's really lovely, but I don't think I have enough of this for that. So this, I'm thinking more of a tank. Her top's like a flowy sleeved top, and I think those sleeves would take up a bit more yarn than I have, unless I make it extremely cropped, which I don't know I want to do. But anyways, I got these. So those were the things that I got from Beautiful Knitters. It was a really nice shop. I recommend looking them up. They also had quite the selection of fingering weight yarns on like the pricier side, hand dyed fingering weight yarns. So if that's something you're looking for, I would look to them as well. But yeah, the last one, I had a question of whether I would end up going to it at all. It is Loop London, and I've heard very mixed things about this store. So some people that I talked to had said that it's owned by an American. They have almost all American yarns. There's no point of you going because you will have had most of these yarns in your local shop, so don't waste your time and go to Loop. Other people have said it's way too expensive. And then while I was in Beautiful Knitters, I had mentioned that I wasn't sure if I was going to go to Loop once I said I was kind of doing the yarn store tour of London. And they said, no, you have to go if for nothing else than to see just the beauty of the store. And that was enough for me, and I went the next morning before we got up to our regular London festivities and went for opening. And first off, the neighborhood that they're in is beautiful. I would highly recommend going up to that area of London just because I didn't have enough time there. I had to zip over to meet a friend at the V&A. I'm just kind of like way across town from where I was, but had I had more time, I would have loved to have spent more time. They're kind of in like an alley, but like a nice alley's not the right word for it, like a walking street, a walkable lane, pedestrian only street that has some beautiful, gorgeous little shops on it. And their shop itself, sorry, I was just thinking about the lane. They had some really nice antique shops kind of in that neighborhood as well, and I would have loved to have gone in. They also have some boutique coffee shops. So when I first got out of the tube station, I saw Pret and I was like, I'm gonna get coffee, and I wish I had waited because there were some really nice local coffee shops along that strip. It's a little bit off the main road, so you can't see it when you get off the tube station, but if you want coffee, wait and get it from one of those local roasters because it smelled like the smell coming off of it was really good, and I wish I had had coffee from there. But losing my voice a little bit. I ended up going to Loop, and obviously I ended up buying something. They have 2 floors. So on the first floor, it is almost all fingering weight yarns. They have a beautiful wall of more of the hand painted indie designer type yarns that go for upwards of 30 pounds and was a little bit beyond what I wanted to pay. It's really interesting to me. A lot of the brands that were there were more American brands and brands that I was familiar with, and they were often priced at 30 pounds, whereas here they'd be priced for $30 to $40. And I found it interesting that some of the yarns that were 30 pounds that I knew were $30 here, where you'd think that with the conversion it would be cheaper, but I'm assuming it takes a bit more money to get them over there. So I would just say, if you're a Brit and you're watching and you end up coming to America or Canada, come check out our hand-painted yarn sections, because I think you're going to get them for a bargain. But yeah, some of them I was looking at, especially she had Lichen and Lace, which is a Canadian brand that I really love, that I've recently bought some yarn for, and the price there was way hiked up from what I can get it for in Canada, and obviously shipping to get here is a lot less. But I will just say, if you're here in the area, I'd love to do another one of these videos for yarn stores in Toronto, but I would just recommend checking out if you come to this area, because I think you can get a lot of those American yarns for a more reasonable price. So that was the main floor, and then upstairs they had thicker weighted yarns. I would agree with the people that said that they lean towards American yarns. They also have some European yarns there as well. And I didn't find as many British yarns. I really struggled to find more British brands. There were a few, but I ended up walking out with some cotton. Strangely enough, I was kind of wandering on the store, going up and down these stairs, and I will note that they don't have an elevator for those of you who stairs are an issue for, but they had a lot more staff than any other yarn store I've ever been into. They had like 4 people there, so I'm sure they would be super happy to help you grab whatever you need from the second floor, should you need it. But I ended up getting this cotton. It is from Crea Deluxe. It's organic cotton, and I got it in the color 45, and it's a 50-gram ball, which is 165 meters, and it's a fingering weight cotton. So it looks like this. It's a really deep green color. She was saying that this is, I think, a Danish brand, but I kind of saw these at the last minute. I was debating getting a Isayer yarn, but then I saw these. They're so cute and little, and I ended up getting 6 of them, and this is the yarn that I think I may make the Knit Pearls girl's new t-shirt out of, even though she used, I think, the silk. I think this cotton will do just fine, but this color of green just like, it really captivated me, and so I've just got 6, and I kind of wish I knew how to juggle, because they're just like the cutest balls. My dog is lying at my feet right now, and he is not pleased with this situation. I actually did know how to juggle for a little bit, because if you've been in like drama class in high school, you'll know that for some godforsaken reason they make you learn how to juggle, and I was really bad at it, and I got a bad grade on it. But I could juggle 3 balls at one point, and then they threw in a 4th, and I was like, I can't I can't do it. And every time I read one of my favorite books, The Physician, I get like bad flashbacks of that time, because there's like a juggling scene in that book. Anyways, that was a bit of a tangent, but I'm really happy with this cotton. It's really smooth and beautiful, and I'm excited to see what I'm going to make with it. It's going to be some kind of summer top. I think I'm going to have to get new needles for this though. My interchangeable set only goes down to a 3.5 millimeter, and I think I'm going to have to use a 3.25 for this, because she is thin, and I don't really want it to be like an open meshy fabric. I want it to be kind of like a tight t-shirt fabric. So that's that. So anyway, that's all the yarn I got in London, which is a lot more than I thought I would, honestly. I didn't expect to get something at every store I went into, but I I just love yarn so much, and the people were so nice that I didn't want to walk in and get nothing. But to sum up, if you're going to London and you want to get a yarn souvenir for your trip, if you are from Europe and you want to get an American yarn, I think Loop London is great. For they're not hand-painted yarns and they're more mass-produced yarns, they are reasonable prices. So if people are telling you that Loop's really expensive, that's only for the one wall of fingering weight yarns. The rest of it is very reasonable. I think each of these were like £5 each, between £4 and £6 each. Very reasonable for the amount of cotton that you're getting, and I think the whole store had some yarns that were really reasonable. If you're someone that is looking to get a very British wool, British centered wool, I would say either go to Beautiful Knitters or go to Wild and Woolly. I think that they both had a decent selection of British yarns. And if you're looking for something that's more aesthetic of the two, I would say go to Beautiful Knitters. It is definitely, in my opinion, in a nicer location and in a nicer neighborhood, and has the slight edge on a beautiful, aesthetically pleasing store. But I will also say they all have a really good online presence, and I would take a look at their stores. And lastly, if you are there and you are going on a Tuesday, Wild and Woolly is your only option. I think Beautiful Knitters does by appointment, but that seemed a little awkward for me personally. So I would go there, and I would always check the hours, because weird hours, like super weird hours for all of the yarn stores. But I guess that's just how it goes with independently owned businesses. If you have any questions about any of these stores, please leave them down below. I'll do my best to answer them. But other than that, I suppose I'll share a little bit about my trip. I left on Wednesday night and did a red-eye flight into London Gatwick, and went immediately to Brighton for the night. I was with two of my colleagues, and we just decided to have a night in Brighton. One of us had already been there, and so he kind of showed us the ropes a little bit. We went and saw the pier and did the lanes, and it was really, really lovely. Just shopping around and being outside. It was probably the coldest of the days that we were there, but we didn't mind so much, and it was really nice to see the channel. And then we went to Hertsmonsu Castle in Sussex in England, and I was there for a conference, and I was staying on the grounds, and it is just such a stunning place. If you are in England, I highly recommend checking it out. It's got really amazing gardens. I saw a lot of people with their dogs there, which was really lovely to see, and the castle itself is just stunning, just absolutely beautiful. I'd love to go back. I probably will go back eventually. I should wrap this up. I'm losing my voice. That's what a week of non-stop travel will do to you. And I was there for 3 days, met some amazing people, and I have a lot of work to do coming out of it, but so it goes. That's the academic life for you. And then I went to London for 4 days. I actually ended up staying in a pod hostel just to save a little bit of money, and that was a really interesting experience. I actually really liked it. The hostel itself was not great, but the pod was a really cool experience, and I would definitely do a pod hostel again. I really enjoyed it. And we just did mostly like not the super touristy things, but not like local things either. We ended up going to see Book of Mormon. We did Borough Market. We basically just wanted to drink beers and have good food and walk around London, and that's all we did basically. And we had a great time. I ended up going to the V&A on the last day because I had never been to the V&A. We had also done the British Library, which they have like a rare books exhibit, permanent exhibit at their library, and that was amazing. I got to go to the Beatles store. If you don't know, the Beatles is my favorite band of all time. I am a huge Paul McCartney stan, and it was just amazing being there again. I always fangirl a little bit in that store, and of course at any Beatles related memorabilia. So that was cool. What what else do we do? A lot of just shopping around. There's a lot of UK brands that I really, really love, and we don't really have a lot of access to here, so that was great as well. And a little bit of research as well, so that was good. It wasn't a research trip by any means. My big research trip will be next year, as I'm still completing my comps, which is like a kind of like a breadth requirement year in doing your PhD in Canada, where you read 200 books to get a good idea of the field to prepare you for teaching, is the idea behind it. So I'm completing that, so I'm not doing a lot of independent research right now, but my research is predominantly on Essex and Sussex in England, and so I'll definitely be back there next year. But it was just so good being there. It was so good being somewhere else. England is in a weird space where it just almost feels like the pandemic never happened. They are wearing no masks, and that was a little scary coming from Ontario, where we are mostly completely masked here, but it's amazing how fast you get used to it, and I really hope that that's the future we're going towards. But overall, I had a really, really lovely time, and although my flight back was not so fun, it was an amazing trip, to say the least, and I'm very, very happy I got to go on it. But anyways, that is my story of knitting through London. I'd love to know what you got up to in the past week. Do you have any summer travels or spring travels coming up? I'd love to hear about it. I am such a huge travel buff that I just love to hear about anyone's travels, and especially let me know if you've been to London, what you think of the London shops. Maybe we can use this as a resource for people going to London in the future to be able to know where to go, know where to check out the local yarn stores. And so yeah, till next time.